This is The Cut, American Whiskey, Daily. A charity in Lexington is giving away 6 bottles of Pappy Van Winkle for $100 a ticket, and less than 10% of the field has sold. That's not a typo. That's just math nobody's taken advantage of yet. I'm John from Chasing the Unicorn podcast. Here's what moved today, August 20, 2026. Today's big move is that raffle, and it's worth slowing down on, because most allocated bottle access runs through odds nobody can calculate. Commonwealth Causes, a Kentucky nonprofit, capped its Ultimate Bourbon Collection raffle at 1,500 tickets, $100 each. As of this week, 130 had sold. Under 10%, this close to the finish line, with the drawing set for August 27th. The grand prize is a full 6-bottle Pappy Van Winkle set, but that's not the whole ticket. 4 more prize packages right along with it. A Buffalo Trace Double Eagle Very Rare, a 6-bottle William LaRue Weller Vertical, an 8-bottle Blanton's Letter Set, and a single Elmer T. Lee. 1 ticket, 5 separate shots at bourbon most drinkers will never see on a shelf at any price. Compare that to a typical distributor lottery, where the odds are a black box and the prize is usually 1 bottle. Here, the ticket count is public, the cap is fixed, and the field genuinely hasn't filled up. Proceeds go to youth and community programs through the Lexington Sporting Club Foundation, so even the ticket you don't win does something. Nothing on your shelf changes this week. But $100 buys real odds at bourbon you can't buy at any price at retail. Now, today's stop on the road. It isn't just Kentucky doing something worth watching this week. 3 very different corners of the country moved, and none of them look like each other. Start in Iowa. Cedar Ridge Distillery just became the official bourbon of Hawkeye Athletics, the first spirits partnership the University of Iowa has ever signed. They launched a line called 1847, named for the year the university was founded, and it's already pouring in the premium club areas at Kinnick Stadium. Cedar Ridge isn't some outside brand buying its way onto a scoreboard either. It's Iowa's own, the state's first licensed distillery since Prohibition, and its original 86 has been the top-selling bourbon in Iowa for a while now. What this really is, a state's best-selling bourbon getting put in front of a stadium full of people who'd never otherwise walk into its tasting room. That's a distribution win most craft distilleries spend a decade chasing and never get. Then there's the Hudson Valley, in New York. A husband and wife team bought a 220-acre former sheep farm back in 2020 and turned it into a rye distillery. But the twist is, they grow most of their own grain. About 70% of what goes into the still is raised right there, on the same dirt, under regenerative farming practices. Their flagship rye runs 3 years old, $88 a bottle. That's an honest farm-to-bottle claim, not a label with a nice illustration on it. Vertical integration like that is rare even among craft producers who build their whole pitch around provenance. And out in Los Angeles, of all places, a brand called Filmland Spirits is dropping a horror movie-themed American single malt called the Malted Mummy. 5 years old, finished in beer barrels sourced from an Iowa brewery, then aged out in Kentucky. It debuts next week at a festival before landing in 19 states. The category it's chasing is the fastest growing corner of the whiskey shelf right now. American single malt was worth over $800 million last year and is on pace to nearly double by the mid-2030s. A novelty label riding a real growth curve built on a genuinely odd supply chain. That's the bet. 3 regions, 3 completely different playbooks, a sports sponsorship, a working farm, and a beer barrel horror bottle. None of them needed a lottery or an allocation list to matter. That's the story. On the Road is actually telling this week. Growth in this category isn't only happening behind a velvet rope in Kentucky. Now, quick first sip, so here's what it is. Allocated describes how a bottle gets distributed, not how good it is. Allocated bourbons are made in limited quantities where demand outpaces supply, so distributors ration them out to retailers in small numbers. Pappy, Buffalo Trace Antique Collection, Weller, Blanton's. Allocated because production is genuinely constrained, not because a marketing team decided to call them rare. You can tell a bottle is really allocated when it moves through a lottery or a wait list, when the price varies wildly by state, and when the secondary market pays multiples of the sticker. Today's raffle is a clean example from the outside. 5 genuinely hard-to-find prize tiers moved through a public, fixed ticket count instead of a black box. What this changes? Next time you hear allocated, don't assume it means better. It just means scarcer, and scarcer is only worth chasing when the bottle underneath actually earns it. And if you're logging pours in the Perfect Pour app, put an allocated bottle next to a regular release in your logbook sometime. It's available now at theperfectpourapp.com. And it's a good way to see how differently the two actually show up on your pour print. One to grab this week. Bardstown Bourbon Company's 2026 Discovery hits shelves nationwide starting tomorrow at $139.99. It's a blend of 7, 10, and 11-year-old bourbons, finished 4 months in custom Garyana oak out of Oregon, bottled hot at 112.8 proof. What makes it worth flagging is the timing. Bardstown released it the same day, at the exact same price, as its Scotch cask sibling, Locks of Jura. That's a genuine same-week comparison, not a marketing pair dressed up to look like one. If you're the kind of drinker who likes to taste two decisions side by side instead of guessing, this is the week to do it. Grab a bottle, and if you can find its sibling too, do the flight yourself. So here's the one thing to take with you today. The bottles worth chasing this week didn't all come from a warehouse in Kentucky. They came from a stadium sponsorship in Iowa, a sheep farm in New York, and a beer barrel in Iowa that ended up in Kentucky anyway. The map is wider than the allocation list. Keep your eyes on all of it. That's the cut. The full American whiskey industry brief is free every morning at chasingtheunicornpodcast.com. I'm John Schuster. Thanks for joining me. Your unicorn is out there.